Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Imperial War Planet She-Hulk, issue number one and only, unfortunately. So basically, the way I look at it is you could completely skip this. It's a extracurricular, superlative comic book. You don't really need it, right? It's supplementary at best. You could just read the regular Imperial stories and be perfectly fine. Here's the question I have for you. Why would you? Why would you not read this? Maybe it'll have something to do with stuff that happens later on. It says to be continued in issue number 4. Yeah, I think that they're going to explain what they need to explain, however they need to explain it in issue 4. But there's a murder on here, and She-Hulk wants to find out who did it. It's interesting. So I like that She-Hulk isn't just, this was my biggest complaint, or fear. I should say my biggest fear, that they were just going to make She-Hulk the way they've always made her, the way they did in the TV shows where she's just twerking and finding a reason to get naked and da-da-da-da-da. I think it's enough for all the pervs out there that she's wearing gladiatorial armor. That being said, I think that she looked great. I think that she kicked plenty of butt. She was still the She-Hulk that we know, where she's, funny. She does some silly things. But man, what an opportunity to turn her into an absolute battle-hardened savage She-Hulk. That's a great title. They should actually use that, the Savage She-Hulk. Imagine that. Anyway, I'm from Jersey. My native language is sarcasm. So I really liked this a lot. In fact, I liked it so much, I'm going to give compliments where compliments are due. Let's talk about who made this comic book. So the writers are Stephanie Phillips and Jonathan Hickman, in that order. Nice. Artist, Emilio Lacio, and color art, Matt Mila. Cover art is by Francesco Mortarino, and Raul Aguilo. Couple of variant covers out there. I feel like J. Scott Campbell is doing a variant cover for every single comic book that Marvel is putting out. Not that I'm complaining. It's just, wow, cool. Anyway, so She-Hulk comes to find out that there's a murder. And it was apparently one of the wives of Hulk's son. So her nephew? Something like that. Second cousin. So she's got to try and figure out which one. And it takes a little bit. It's only a 28-page comic book or so. And it goes through some stuff, and we see some funny stuff in here. There's a really good moment where she's fighting off a lot of things. Like, a lot. She has to pull out the sword, and she has to go Planet She-Hulk in a way. Whooping some people's butts. Really getting violent. But she can cut loose. It's not a problem. There's no blood, so but you'll understand why when you read this. Is this good for kids? I don't see why it would necessarily be bad for kids. I don't think I missed anything. I would read it first if I were you, but I think this is going to be just fine for kids. It's a great introduction to She-Hulk. There is a lot of butt kicking in this, and a lot of fish out of water, mind you. Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk, she's really just a chick from America, from Earth. And just like when you go to a different country, sometimes even just a different state or a different province or wherever you're from, right? The customs can change fairly drastically. And you could completely be a fish out of water in a heartbeat and not know where you stand, not know what you're supposed to do next. Like, I'm in Rome and I don't know how to do like the Romans do. You got to learn. You got to learn to swim, right? She-Hulk is trying to figure all of that stuff out in this comic book, and she's still being herself. There's a moment in here while she's fighting. It almost seems like they could have made it so that she was trying to resist a berserker rage. I would have loved to see that. The explanation that Stephanie Phillips gives is, and this isn't what she does, but it would have been great if she would have done this, where She-Hulk acts the way she acts, silly, sometimes cracking jokes while she's fighting, much like Spider-Man. But she does it because if she doesn't, that's how she loses control. That's how she rages out. That would be a cool little story if they put that in there. That said, this was seriously good enough. She's sitting there singing at one point. She's talking about Beauty and the Beast. Really fun stuff. This is She-Hulk. It really is. Great job getting this character right. The story was, I mean, it's nothing amazing, but it is a She-Hulk story, and it feels very much like a She-Hulk fish out of water story. Shulky off of Earth kind of story. Here's her brother and, or excuse me, her cousin and all these other people, and they're extremely violent, and that's really not Shulky, right? But she's got to be in that world for a moment. She's got to handle things her own way. And there's a lot of eye rolling in this. Not a lot, but at the end, there's a little bit of eye rolling, and it's very, very fitting. I think this was a fantastic comic book. The art is absolutely great. Man, if I ever did write a comic book, this is the way I would want it to be drawn. I mean, it's just perfect, right? It's not too gritty because it's not supposed to be too gritty a comic book. The colors, everything, it really feels like it's perfect for the story that's being told, for the plot that is being presented, for the theme that we're presented with. Every single thing about this book is essentially perfect. That being said, it doesn't mean that this is like book of a year in any way, shape, or form. If you want to skip this, be my guest. Be my guest, be my guest, be your guest. Like that's a song she was singing. But for all intents and purposes, if you want to get a good idea of how a comic book should be done for a specific character, this is perfect. This is perfect. Every single thing about this comic book, every single person put in place for this comic book is either perfect for this comic book or perfectly understands the way that this comic book and this story and this character should be written, drawn, colored, inked, penciled, all that good stuff, right? Everything about this book was just spectacular, fantastic. I think you're going to like this comic book, especially if you're a She-Hulk fan, right? This feels like a very strong, confident She-Hulk who doesn't belong here, but she's going to do the best she can with what she's got. And unfortunately, what she's got is not a lot of friends, and there's been an assassination, and she's got to try and figure this out and fight through whatever comes at her at the meantime. And when the accusation is made, that's when all the chips are just thrown off the table, and it might as well just be a punching contest at this point because nobody wins, and meanwhile everybody wins. This was a really good comic, guys. I would suggest checking this out, right? Anyway, that's it for me. Like the video, watch an ad. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.